Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, we had a great meeting last Thursday of the Impaired and Distracted Driving Committee, and we finally have our banners and flag. And so I was talking to Ken, and he graciously volunteered to come and tell you about them tonight, just for a few minutes. There's one missing. It was out of commission. So, Ken, if you want to come forward, then you can tell them all about it. Thank you.
Please come forward, Mr. Johnson. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Constable Johnson. We appreciate it. Any questions? Councillor Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to Ken. Ken, thank you very much for all you do. Just a quick question, just for my own personal information. Impaired driving, is that just alcohol, or does that include, say, marijuana? Or is that something, a whole other?
Impaired is also by drug. It's alcohol or drug.
Okay.
There's two distinct things with, so impaired driving is when you actually see the car going down the road like this. That's impaired. It can be by alcohol, it can be by drug. When you do it, the charge of over 80 is strictly for alcohol. And that's when we pull you over to ride check, but we haven't got any driving evidence, but we smell alcohol on your breath. and then we do a demand to you, and then you provide it to a machine that tells us what your blood alcohol level is. So there's two different things. We get you for both, then you get your charge impaired and over 80. If it's like a ride check with no driving limits, it's just over 80.
Like I said, I'm just wondering, because you obviously know what the legislation's coming down, I'm just wondering if you see that as a big problem.
You know what, we enforce whatever laws the Canadian government asks us to enforce, so I know from our side of the house, whatever way gets decided above us is what we're gonna follow, and I know they're gonna give us the tools to do it. We already have the ability to arrest people for impaired by drug. It's just now that they're probably gonna refine that a little bit for us. We already have drug recognition officers in place in the OPP that can come in, and within about an hour, they can tell somebody exactly what drug that person's on. So we do have things leading toward that, but we're really in a place where we follow and enforce whatever laws are put in place by the government. So, and we're prepared to do that, whatever we have to do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Pierce, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, you talked about putting the banners up in this location, that location. How many sets of those do you have, or is that the only one?
That's it. We have one more banner that is, and you know what, the committee kind of does run on a bit of a tight budget. Like we're not, I guess we don't have a lot of money to spend, and that was fairly significant in those. The other thing that came with those is that those were actually designed by the kids in the high school, so we put a contest together every year, and the kids design those.
Okay.
And I think it was BCI was the school that was selected from. So there is some significance to why we put them back into the high schools too. But they'll be rotated. So Safe Paris has a large pep rally coming up, which October 25th we're actually doing a fentanyl and opioids awareness day for the entire school population. So Detective Chris Ogier from the OPP is coming in to talk to the school population about that. That's the day that we'll have those banners available to us, so they'll be up in there for the entire school population to see. Now, if BCI has a big day coming up, their school officer could use it for something at their school too.
Okay.
As opposed to leaving it sitting in the office where you get maybe 3% of the school population coming in.
Right.
It's better for us to run it at like a bigger event like that.
Okay, so sorry, just to confirm, so there's one between the city and the county?
City, county, and Six Nations.
And Six Nations. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gatward, please.
Thank you. And they can be used at fall fairs, but they're made only for indoors. And you just have to request them through Ken if you want them at something that you are having. Ken, the other thing I forgot to mention was our recent initiative to recognize those who call in. Did you want to tell them briefly about that?
I think it's November 14th. The Safe Streets Award will be handed out, and that's through this committee. It's going to be at Six Nations Council this year. So the OPP recognized one police officer who's done a large portion of trying to get impaired drivers off the streets. Brantford City recognizes one, and Six Nations recognizes one. This year we've added a new component to it, which is where we're recognizing citizens who have called in. And Six Nations actually they're recognizing the entire Tim Hortons restaurant down there because I guess they're very active with calling in when people go through the drive-thru impaired. Brantford has 3 or 4 people from a major incident, and we have 2 from an incident that happened at Pinehurst Park here. 2 young ladies who kind of stepped up and went above and beyond and called in. Probably, in all honesty, the person blew over 300. So my guess is, with people sleeping in tents, you don't want them driving a car around in a community like that, so I'm fairly certain they saved lives too. So, wow.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We really do appreciate everything you and the OPP do for us. Thank you.
And I'll leave the banners up for you to enjoy tonight, and I'll come back tomorrow morning and get them. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Thanks, John. Moving forward, item B, Henry Stolp, Riverview Highlands. Please come up to the podium. Members of committee, you do have a request for registration package here that has been dropped off to you this evening.
Mr. Chairman, members of committee, I'm here again after being here on October 3rd in front of PAC with virtually the same issues. Our request is that we Well, before I do that, I should introduce other people in the audience. Gary Norris and Colleen, who's my assistant, are with me from Riverview and Pinevest. Ken and John Edgar are Mile Hill Developments, and also several other businesses in the Paris and Brant County area, and Bill Lisk with Lozani Homes, who is becoming a substantial landowner in the area. So our request is to permit registration of both Riverview Highlands Phase 1 and Mile Hill Phase 1 prior to final MOE approval of the Gurney outfall. The lands that we're talking about is our Phase 1 is in pink on top of Riverview Highlands. It's fully serviced. It has a temporary water connection into it, and the lands in blue are lands which we acquired from Jim Young, and it'll be coming in front of the PAC committee sometime in November, December. The lands in beige are Phase 1 owned by Mile Hill and also serviced. They have electrical connections, we do not. And the Phase 2 lands are owned by Mile Hill but under a contract with Lozani Homes. Hang on. Oh, this is the wrong one. There we go. So what we'd asked for on October the 3rd was that there were 7 conditions. The first being final approval of outlet design by the county and Ainley and GRCA. That's now done. GRCA has given approval, as has Ainley and the county. The second was an EAC application for the Gurney outlet submitted to MOE, which is also done, couriered by Mr. Paul Emerson on October the 11th. The third is an undertaking by the landowners in Lozani Homes to mitigate any required changes by MOE upon final approval of the design. This would be part of our subdivision agreements, both in the Mile Hill subdivision agreement and the Riverview Highlands subdivision agreement. The fourth is award the contract for construction of the Gurney outlet and provide security to the county for any mitigation. So we're well underway with that and working with our consultants to get that started. I apologize for my hoarse voice, but I don't know what's happened. The fifth is to obtain an overland flow easement on the Gurney lands, as well as an agreement to pay for oversizing of the underground stormwater services on the part of the Gurney lands between Mile Hill and Pottruff Road. The first part of that is done as part of the agreements that Lozani have done when they bought the Lozani East lands, or the Gurney East lands. The sixth is execute subdivision agreements for both Mile Hill and Riverview. In the case of Mile Hill and Riverview, both of these have been drafted. Ours was ready in July, other than having some clauses with respect to the Gurney outfall. The seventh, which I think will be the most difficult, is complete and execute a landowner's cost-sharing agreement. And we have one of our first meetings this coming Thursday morning to deal with those issues. So I repeat what we said on October the 3rd, just because some of the issues have already been done. With respect to the status of our projects, Mile Hill has ECA approval for Phase 1. It also has an ECA for the Gurney outfall through an amendment of their subdivision. Again, the subdivision agreement is drafted and well underway. And we've also executed a cost-sharing agreement some time ago, which we verbally agreed that would be changed between ourselves and Mark Gurney. Riverview Highlands status is virtually the same, other than we have an executed subdivision agreement. So in both cases, both subdivisions have ECA approvals. That's why servicing was allowed to proceed, or has been proceeding. So this is what we've come to talk about in effect. Registration prior to final ECA and MOE approval of the Gurney outfall, in our opinion, poses no risk to the county when the outlined 7 conditions that I talked about earlier are applied to the developers, particularly the mitigation clause. We would take on any of the county's liabilities if we knew what they were, and we'll talk about that in a minute because I understand you're dealing with something in camera. We would also agree that there be no occupancies until the ECA is issued for the outlet. And the last thing is, I just want to describe some of the time frame we've dealt with. We've been dealing with this outfall for the last 5 years, one way or another. There is a design which has been approved by the county, which is not acceptable anymore, and also has an ECA a letter from the MOE. So that's the design which was done by Cahoons. We changed that sometime last year, and the time frame from last year to now has taken longer than we expected, mostly because of the difficulties we've had with our soils consultants, Englobe. When we executed our cost-sharing agreement, we expected in discussions we've had with the county and discussions I've had with Mr. Cunningham that we would be servicing and building houses there this past June. And that's why we entered the subdivision. That's why we went as far as we did. So why allow registration? One of the problems that we have at this point is we think it's in the county's best interest to allow registration at this point. We're not sure what the items are in the in-camera report. We were asked on October 3rd, there was asked to be a staff report after the PAC meeting, and we weren't aware that would be an in-camera, and we found out about it being in camera last Thursday. So the question is, why is it in camera? We've been dealing in good faith in a public forum rather than and using ourselves as presenters rather than having any legal presentations. So that's one concern we have. We understand there's no real policy with respect to not allowing registration prior to ECA approval. It's a practice, but it's not a policy. And third, we've come forward as working together to resolve this issue as opposed to being in any adversarial role between us and the county. So it's going forward that way. What we'd ask is that we as the members of us as developers also participate in the in-camera meeting, either after your presentation or discussion, or be part of it afterwards. What we're really looking for from this committee is a decision tonight to go forward to council. I understand in discussions we've had with Heather today that we may ask for a copy of the staff report, but it'll be up to the committee because, let me just read it. This is a confidential matter between client and solicitor's opinion. So that's the issue that we have in front of us. So from our perspective it was a bit disappointing, not a bit disappointing, it's disappointing that we can't deal with, we don't know what the issues are, what your concerns are, so we don't have any opportunity to deal with it at this time. And therefore, we'd like to be present at part of the in-camera meeting if that meets with your approval, and we'd certainly look for a decision this evening with respect to our request. So our request will save time, allow for houses to be built while we're going through the process of the getting ECA from MOE, and allow us to work in concert with the committee or with staff to go through all of the conditions that we talked about earlier. So we're respectfully requesting that the council of the corporation of the county of Brant approve a resolution for the registration of subdivisions known as Mile Hill Developments Phase 1 and repairs to Riverview Highlands Phase 1 prior to MOE approval of the Gurney outfall and subject to the 7 conditions which I outlined earlier. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Stolp. Is there any questions to Mr. Stolp at this time? No questions, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item C. Mr. Tim Bullock, Simpson Weigel Law. Please come to the podium, sir.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to appear on what I understand is a bit of an odd request of you, or something that's new for you to have seen. I'm here on behalf of Lee Silvestri Developments. They're the developer of the Fox Hill subdivision, and that's been a long and ongoing problem for you and for the developer. Over the last 2 years, the project's been seized by the throat, and a lot of work has been done. $350,000 has been spent. The grading's been addressed. The ponding's been addressed. So that we're down to some paper filing on grading. We've got a request from the county to redo the road, the base, the first coat, and do a second coat. You're holding a letter of credit in the amount of $278,000 to ensure that that work is done and all other work is done. We've given you a quote from Coco Paving that's for roughly $315,000 to get that done. We're suggesting that due to the effort, the work that's been done recently, the problems we had that came from engineering difficulties, engineers not being available, that we're proposing two possible solutions. Really what ultimately could come out of this meeting is a direction from you to your staff to meet with us to determine if there is a solution that will work for everybody. And how quickly we can get that solution done would determine how much work can get finished on that road this year. So between now and a council meeting, depending on what your resolution may be, then we would be meeting quickly and hard with your staff to come up with that resolution. Essentially, we've got two possible solutions. Number one, we'll take the letter, we will let you cash the letter of credit. You take that money, you go do the road in whatever manner you wish. Top layer, base, etc., any other minor issues that need to be addressed. I'm not aware of any significant issues that need to be addressed. So you can take that money, determine what you wish to do, when you wish to do it, and finish that road. The alternative is, and that letter of credit secured by cash at HSBC, so that's where that money is. The alternative is you return the letter of credit, we take the cash, set it aside, ensure that you have some control over that cash as well as, so that we don't just take it and run away. And then we'll take over the project, work on it, get it done for the same amount as in the LC. We're saying you've had, you, the community, the residents have had use of that base road, top surface. You've been collecting taxes on those homes. I realize you don't necessarily set up an appropriate, you set up an appropriate amount for early, but amortize it over time. We're suggesting that we've already spent $185,000 on that road. That's based on the subdivision agreement, the schedule attached, that we should be getting credit for some of that 185, not all, and therefore we're suggesting the 278 is the right number for what it should cost to get all this done. And that's it. That's our simple, possibly obtuse request. You have my letter, which outlines that. I know there were some questions from Mr. Cunningham with respect to that. I'm not sure he's had time to communicate everything to you, but that's where we are at. So essentially, I'm asking for you guys to asking for the committee to direct staff to meet with us to resolve this, to get the road done as soon as possible, and address any other of the issues that are outstanding. And that's that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you, sir, for your report. Is there any questions? Councillor Gatward, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the delegation, Mr. Bullock. You said that we could look after it. when you say "we," does that mean your firm, or does that mean Silvestri?
We would mean Silvestri. So Silvestri would go do the work, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sorry.
I just wanted to be clear.
Counselor Simons? Nothing? Okay. Any other questions? Thank you for your presentation, sir.
Thank you.
Items 4A through B and C. How would committee like to handle A? Counselor Pierce. Thank you. Seconder, please. Counselor Powell. Questions or concerns? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item number 2. Counselor Gatward.
I'll move that we refer the presentation to the report made in the meeting. I guess it's 14A.
Refer to the in-camera.
14A. For
That's in camera.
further discussion, yes.
Counselor Chambers.
That would be inappropriate. The in-camera item needs to be heard, and then the item dealt with, and the item 4B needs to be dealt with out of camera. So you can't refer it in camera. So it should be deferred until the in-camera session is completed. In other words, if the counselor
Yes.
doesn't understand that, you can't refer something in camera that's not an in-camera item.
Correct. Counselor Gatward, do you understand that one? Is that okay?
Yes, I see where Councillor Chambers is coming from, and we can decide what we're going to do with B after we
Do the in-camera.
That's fine with me. Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
And Counselor, would you second that? Are you seconding that motion? So, Counselor Gatward, would you like to make that a motion then? The one that Counselor Chambers was talking about the changes to?
I'll move that 4B be referred for discussion after 14A.
Counselor Chambers seconds. Any questions or concerns? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 4C, Mr. Bullock's presentation on behalf of Leah Silvestri Investments. Counselor Gatward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an unusual situation. We don't very often have a developer offering up their letter of credit, and this subdivision has gone on for a very long time, and I get complaints about it every year, and a lot in the fall, because every year they hope the final coat of pavement's going to go on. So what I'm going to suggest is that we refer the presentation to staff for a report back to council next week on their recommendations regarding this.
Do we have a seconder? Counselor Coleman. Any questions or concerns? Gentlemen, did you have any questions or concerns? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Moving on, 5A, adoption of the minutes. Counselor Miller, seconder. Counselor Simons, questions or concerns? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Business arising from minutes? Doesn't seem to be any there. 7A, consent items. A1. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. B, consent items to be received. B1 through 26. Anyone like anything pulled? Counselor Pierce? You're moving? Counselor Simons?
It's the AMO proposed change to the gas system.
Could you put your mic on, please? We can't hear you.
It's not here, Mr. Chair.
It's not there?
No.
Okay. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Gatward? Councillor Coleman, thank you for seconding.
B1?
Is it here? Councillor Simons?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I apologize.
That's okay.
It's B1, Ontario Municipal Board Appeals, and I think this should be discussed. It's concerning our public health system, and we need to talk about it.
Okay, we'll pull that one then. Any other ones? Councillor Gatward?
I don't want to pull it, but I did want to comment on B2 and thank our water staff for doing a good job. The audit came back with no issues for our 5 water drinking systems, so thank you very much, water staff, for a job well done.
Thank you. All in favor of 2 to 6? Opposed? Carried. Item number 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is referring to the public health unit, as far as I can gather, and I think the CEO
That's
got
the
me
OMB.
wrong. I think the CEO,
I think you said Ontario.
No, that's the OMB is not to do with the health. Councillor Boma?
If it can satisfy Councillor Simons, I too saw this email come through, and we are, Councillor Chambers and I believe, are dealing with this through the Board of Health, and it should be coming back as a resolution through at our council meeting next week,
okay.
after it's dealt with on Wednesday morning at the Board of Health. Is that correct, Heather? Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you,
Thank you, Councillor.
thank you.
So, number 1, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Committee reports. 8A, Economic Development Advisory Committee report. There is a recommendation there. Do I have a seconder? Mayor Eddy? Questions or concerns? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. B, Renaissance Committee report. Questions or concerns?
I'll move it, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Seconder? Councillor Pierce, any questions? I have one question to the committee. When we're making these suggestions, I guess my biggest concern is if you're a new business coming into town, you're brand new, you've only just started. What's to say a year down the road the business doesn't fold and we have a sign that we paid half for? You understand what I'm saying?
I understand.
Like some of our storefronts have been here for 30 years, 50 years, 20 years. We got a brand new storefront and we're going to dedicate 50%. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's just a question. Are we able to?
That question has never come up, Mr. Chair, but I certainly can take it back to the committee because it's never been talked about.
Yeah.
It's always been that we're trying to encourage people to change up their signage.
Yep.
So,
Okay, I'm just worried about new industry
Yeah.
and new business coming into town,
Yeah,
especially
exactly.
in the main core where it's for in the Renaissance area. And
exactly.
you know, if they've been in business a year, they've proven themselves, they're going forward. But
It could be
anything
part
under
of the-
that, I have a concern
That could be
with.
part of the criteria added to it. It's, no, we've never discussed that whatsoever, so.
Just a thought.
I'll bring it forward.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, seeing no other questions. Oh, Councillor Gatward?
It's not a question, Mr. Chair, but a comment. I'm wondering if in future, any of these information grant requests that come forward could have pictures with them so that we can see what they're proposing looks like? I
Actually,
just think that's a good idea.
Sure, okay.
There was a picture on
I
the
think
one.
they're-
Yeah.
This one here.
Yeah.
There's. this is
Anyways,
one
they'll make
that's-
sure that happens.
It's over by the bridge.
Like I say, I'm not complaining, I'm just wondering if that's some of the criteria they could look at.
I will certainly bring that
Thank you.
forward.
Might not have been.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to the Renaissance Committee Report C. There is a recommendation there. All in, mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Coleman, Councillor Boma. Questions or concerns? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Staff report. Is there a staff report? Corporate services. A. Seconder, Counselor Wheat. Any questions or concerns? Counselor Boma?
I'm just curious how it would be addressed if someone's crossing a trail with a firearm, if they're not allowed to be on a trail with a firearm.
Good point.
And just hoping for an answer for that. Thank you.
Who could answer that? Lynn, if you wouldn't mind coming up, please. Thank you, Lynn. Good question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of council. There's an exemption in that clause that says except if they're exercising a lawful right-of-way over land. So that was inserted in there in case, sometimes there's fields on either side and somebody needs to cross. So there's an exemption in that clause that allows for a rightful use of the right-of-way crossing.
I was looking for it and I missed it. Thank you.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. General Manager's update, please. Ms. Hewitt, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Just two items tonight. One, through funding received from the province, the Social Services is undertaking a study of ways to improve the voting experience for residents age 55 plus in both the city and the county. An online survey has been set up and a focus group will be held at the Brant Sports Complex on October 30th. And details and promotional materials will be sent out to all members on Friday. And the second item I have is, I think you may have got an email about this today, but Inspector Liptrot will be taking a 6-month temporary assignment with the OPP Criminal Investigations Branch beginning November 6th. Staff Sergeant Jim Milsom will be the acting inspector and detachment commander, and Detective Sergeant Mary Louise Cairns will act as the Brant County Detachment Operations Manager.
So, Ms. Hewitt, while Inspector Liptrot is gone, then we're not paying for that service, correct, for his position?
Well, we're still receiving services of a detachment commander with the acting role of Sergeant Milson.
But not the inspector's position. Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you. Appreciate it. Moving forward, corporate services, there is a recommendation. Item 1.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Any questions, concerns? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. General Manager's update, please. Oh, what?
There's another one under operations,
Where?
the next page.
Oh, sorry. This one.
When you've done those two.
Okay, we're here now.
9B2. 9B2.
Oh, all right. Oh, yes, item 2, CD 1798, extension of Worthington Drive. Mr. Bradley, would you like to speak on this for a moment, please, to give us an update on this?
Mr. Chair, do we have a map showing this, please?
Mr. Chair, I came prepared.
Yes, we do.
It's one of the package.
In the addendum. Right here.
You're welcome, Your Worship.
Right here.
Bear with me, Mr. Chair.
And there it is.
You didn't always look at this package.
So, Mr. Chair, I'll just, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I apologize for the lateness, bringing this as a late starter. We were negotiating this over the course of the week, and I think we arrived at the solution on early Saturday morning. But The proponent is wanting to get moving. It's an employment land project, so we usually do what we can to facilitate these. So very quickly, Mr. Chair, this is Worthington Drive here. It fronts onto Colborne Street East. It serves as a service road basically for businesses that front onto Colborne Street East to keep the business traffic off of the main road. The current road, although it looks like it extends, the current, what I would call proper road surface ends about here at the property line, and this is 5 Worthington Drive. It's being developed right now. There's, I think, it's about a 20,000 square foot facility that's planned to be built right there. This is 500 County Road 18, and you can see it has an entrance onto Brant County Road 18, and it actually enters right into the exit lane, the eastbound exit lane, and traffic, especially in busy times of the day, it's quite a complicated, basically a movement onto that area. So we've had discussions with the proponent who's building this building here, also who owns this building here. And he's asked us to ask the county to consider extending Worthington Drive to this property. And in discussions, we feel that there's a good argument to be made for us to undertake this project in exchange for closing this access point here. So we all know what we have to go through to close accesses in the future. Unquestionably, at some point in the future, this access would have to be closed. We'd probably have to financially go about that in some fashion. So this is an amicable, kind of what I would call win-win situation for the owner of this property, as well as this property, and the county, for the county to undertake extension of Worthington Drive. So again, Mr. Chair, there's where it ends. That's the part of Worthington Drive we're proposing to build to a proper standard, and this is the entry we're proposing to close. And hopefully that makes sense. Again, my apologies for the late starter on this report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. Any questions for Mr. Bradley?
I'll move it.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Question, Councillor Simons, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Michael. Are there services there for that business to start up and move on, or is it a joining business with the one that's already there?
Mr. Chair, these are separate parcels. 5 Worthington Drive and 500 are separate parcels. They happen to be owned by the same person right now, so this is how we're able to facilitate this.
Okay.
Whether they're continue to be owned by the same person in the future, that's of course up to the owner. But so there's a good opportunity for right now for us to kind of comprehensively deal with these 2 properties and the extension with the same owner. So.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gatward and Councillor Pierce, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the General Manager. The existing Worthington Drive, when we extend it to 5 Worthington Drive to allow the company to have access off Worthington for their business, I understand that. However, 500 County Road 18 is still going to have an access further south from the corner. Actually, there's 2 accesses. One they share with TSC, and the other one is a separate entrance into the parking lot currently. So why do we have to take Worthington all the way down to 500 County Road 18 when they're still going to have 2 accesses off County Road 18?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I can't explain why there were 2 accesses granted to that property at the time, but I would note that this southern access here, it's basically, kitty corner to the access across the road, and it's certainly well outside of the intersection. This access is in the intersection. It's existing. They're hard to get rid of. So our opportunity right now is to basically barter that access onto Worthington Drive. It'll be a much safer solution for the future. Whether we wanted to try to push back and just remove that access completely from the owner, we could try that. But again, it's an existing access right now, and it is a challenging situation to try to take something from a property owner that's been existing for a long time. So,
Councillor
I
Pierce.
do see that, Mr. Chairman, the south or the northerly access closest to the corner. And when you had discussions with the property owner, was it suggested to him at that time to remove that access?
Mr. Chair, this kind of evolved. Again, we were having discussions with the owner about the extension, and we arrived at the idea that, well, you know, the value to us to extending Worthington Drive that far would be to get rid of this other access, which goes into one of our busiest intersections, like right into one of our busiest intersections.
I travel through there all the time,
Absolutely.
so I can attest, it's very busy. But it's just that I'm wondering if we don't have to, if he doesn't want to give up that access, then we shouldn't extend the road down to that property, in my opinion.
Agreed, Mr. Chair, and so the resolution is that we would, our agreement to extend Worthington Drive would be conditional on their agreement to close that access. We'd have to register that on title, because they're two separate properties that we're dealing with here, and that would basically give us the right to close it, contingent on us building Worthington Drive out and giving them a new access onto Worthington Drive. So.
Thank you.
Councillor Pierce.
It's all good, Mr. Chair. Michael answered my question through his discussion there. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Coleman?
Just a comment, Mr. Chair, I do support your recommendation because you can always, that business of 500, 118, could be split off again like it was in the past and have two different accesses. This way the access would be off Worthington Drive and then the access back off 18. So I support the recommendation. Let's move on. We'll go to New York.
Okay. No more questions. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Mr. Bradley. General Manager's update, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few quick items. This is the last Corporate Development Committee that we will have before we move to weekly recycling. So I think that's an exciting time, especially if you're like us at home, where we have two giant recycling boxes full to the brim after 2 weeks, and we forget occasionally. So. Looking forward to that. Canesville servicing, there was an approval to undertake a study for Canesville and the airport servicing, and we had our first meeting last week with the consultant, and that's well underway. Rob Walton, and our new Director of Engineering or Infrastructure, he's going to take that project on, and we're working quite quickly to go through that project. We would hope to have that project completed by year end. So.
Thank you.
Scotland Community Center opens this weekend. It's Saturday. I believe the opening ceremony is 11 o'clock. So there's lots of good activities planned for that, and it'll be a great day. So, and this a quick update, Brant Municipal Enterprises, the board will have its bi-monthly meeting next Thursday. I think a big topic of our discussion will be the SWIFT program. Mr. Noble and I have been working through some of the details of the SWIFT program that are rolling in, and we're just really at this point waiting for the next phase of the SWIFT program's competitive procurement process. So we think we've got all of our ducks in order to basically put a good application in for BME to build some of the SWIFT network. So that's my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Gower.
Can you refresh my memory? Who is the consultant for the servicing for airport?
GM Blue Plan is the consultant, Mr. Chair, and you'll recall they're also doing the city's master servicing plan, and given that the city's providing the capacity for that servicing, we saw the logical dovetail of those two projects. So.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Bradley. Moving forward, we have D, Economic Development, Strategic Investment. What? C? Oh, Development Services. General Manager's update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few things. As was mentioned earlier by Henry Stolp, the Gurney Outlet ECA went into MOE. There's a couple of things that need to be cleaned up at the end, and we appreciate the developers from coming in from Stony Creek to help us get that package together so we can get off to MOE. We are also in the middle of conducting the fee review, as I've stated last time. We've had some meetings with the consultant who has come in and met with some individual groups of staff within the Development Services Department. The idea is to kind of look at the impacts of work, the amount of work for each application, people who are involved, and that will be brought forward as soon as possible. The other thing I'd like to give an update on is a couple of positions that have been advertised. We do have a sign-back agreement for one person to accept a position. That person is going to be starting on November 13th. Formal announcement will go out. I believe we got that sign-back. There is another position, which I think we've got a verbal acceptance on. We're still waiting for a final sign-back on that. I believe that person, as it is right now, is looking at possibly starting on the 27th of November. And again, for that one there, formal announcement will go out as well.
Thank you, Mr. Bomponi. Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, economic development and strategic investment. Ms. Newton, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A few updates, and first a thank you. Salute to Brant has taken place since our last meeting, and it was the first one that I've attended. I think it went very well. There were 230 attendees and over 40 nominations. We had, for the most part, excellent feedback on the event, and we have had a debrief meeting since and identified, of course, areas of improvement that are always there. And if there's any feedback that any of you have that aren't part of that committee, please feel free to reach out to either Councillor Simons or myself and let us know. Our department worked with the Workforce Planning Board of Grand Erie to produce a new manufacturing video. This is actually their initiative that we partnered with them on. And I'm happy to say that 3 Brant businesses were featured in the video: Walters Group, Creative Carriage, and Brooks Signs. The video was entitled "We Make It Here," and it highlighted all the communities throughout the Grand Erie Workforce Planning Board jurisdictions. OMAFRA, they're doing the special Canada 150 signs. They're available to any businesses or municipalities that can demonstrate that they've been actively farming for over 150 years. We have applied for one of the signs for Brant County, and there are numerous businesses also within the county that are applying for those. So I'll keep you posted on the progress of that. CIP, definitely seeing an increase in that, what we thought might happen after the summer. The 2 applications you saw come forward tonight, and there are also 2 additional applications pending. We are also going to proceed with the new marketing material for the program and roll that out in the fall. We've also seen an uptick since the summer ended with investment inquiries. Currently, we're working on 7 new investment leads, including 3 expansions, 2 downtown redevelopment projects, and 2 new investments to the county. So that's all good signs. Fresh Spoke, I don't know how many of you have heard of it. They are the organization that's taking over the food hub that was initially part of the SCORE program. So Fresh Spoke is the organization that's taking it over. I have information here if anyone's interested in it. They did 1 information session back in the spring, and they're doing the next one on November 1st from 10 to 12 here in council chambers, if anyone is interested in that. A bit of an update on SCORE. They will be doing another foreign direct investment trip with 168 Canada at the end of November. It's actually going to be part of the Premier's mission to China that's happening at the same time. And following that, at the next meeting of the SCORE board, we will be discussing the project in a broader sense, just to gauge the progress and results and determine where SCORE is going to go with that agreement moving forward. And lastly, BDAC will be having a facilitated strategic planning session in November to look at its mandate and structure moving forward. I believe, although I've only been here for a few months, it's been about 5 years since that was re-examined, so that's going to be looked at in November. That's it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Councillor Bowman, please.
Just wanted to make you aware, if you weren't, that there is a farm over on County Road 18 somewhere near the bridge that has been continuously farmed by the same family since 1866. If you don't have it.
We did send it out to our mailing list, and we have it out on a couple of things, but I will definitely follow up.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving along, we have E, CD 1799 Emergency Management Program Compliance. That was quick. Michael, did you want to speak to it for a moment? We have a mover and seconder.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for allowing me to get this on the committee's agenda for tonight. We were able to have an audience with our local field officer of the Office of Fire Marshal Emergency Management on Friday. The CAO, myself, had a conversation about addressing some of the issues that came as a result of the letter dated July 31st that placed the county in non-compliance with the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act. As a result, the recommendation is as placed before you so that we can address those issues and continue moving forward so that we ensure that our compliance is satisfactory for 2017.
Thank you. Councillor Miller, please.
Through you to the chief. Michael, so what would this committee be tasked with doing? I'm guessing something to do with emergency management, but just, can you give me just a quick overview of what they would do?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the two big components of this committee will be conducting a review of our hazard identification risk assessment on an annual basis. They will also look at an evaluation of our critical infrastructure that we have, and finally conducting a formal review of the plan to see where updates are required to remain compliant and grow the plan based on growth of the county as well.
Councillor Pierce, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, just for clarification, if I could, did we not do something like this like last year and the year before? So I'm just wondering, is this should this not be an ongoing thing that we don't have to create every year?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is an annual exercise that we have to go through. Not being here last year to see what the review was, how it was completed. My understanding is that a review of the hazards and a risk assessment was not completed, nor was a review of the critical infrastructure. The other one was that the program committee, through the existing bylaw, I believe it's 27004, allows for the creation of the program, but it doesn't give direction on how the program will function or the committee will function and how often they'll meet. My plan is for before the end of this year, an updated bylaw to address a lot of those issues will be forthcoming.
Okay, so if I could then, Mr. Chair, this will probably be the last time we see this, if this is going to be an ongoing thing then, right?
Well, I'm hoping...
Like the creation of it is what I'm talking about. Like, I fully support what it's doing, and I understand we have to do it, but I'm just talking the whole creation of this committee. Like, the committee was already formed, so why do we have to form it again, is all I'm going.
Well, that was the, I guess that was the problem, is that the committee was given function under the bylaw, but there was no direction given to the actual committee and the formation of the committee, and to meet at least once through the year, through 2016. And so that's one of the recommendations that we're trying to fix at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Communications. Do we have a mover, please, to accept communications? Councillor Coleman, Councillor Miller. Questions or concerns? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. What's this, Simpson?
Can I speak to this one?
Okay.
Just a note, the first one is the Roma conference delegations. So they're due November 2nd. So if anybody has any suggestions, if you can send them to me, I can draft up a report for council next week, but I'll need them in short order if we're going to make these delegation requests.
Councillor Gatward?
We referred the presentation earlier in the meeting to Sean for a report. Should we just receive the, Mr. Chair?
Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Yes, we did. That was the motion, yes, so. Okay, matters referred by council, there are none. Other business, there is none. And CAO's update, please.
A couple of quick things. We started our staff budget review. We've looked at 2 drafts of the budget now. The second time we looked at it was today. And I don't think you're seeing it till early November, according to the schedule. But we're following the process outlined by council, asking to come back with a status quo budget and then with a list of strategic and needs and enhanced services and things like that. Emergency planning exercise, I don't think Mike got into it, but we did 2 days of emergency planning Thursday and Friday. The staff team, along with the OPP, fire and ambulance services that would be involved in setting up an EOC, Emergency Operations Center, in case of emergency, and went through all this training and so on. So that was very good. Did a mock exercise. It was just a small thing, but it was just to get everybody familiar with what to do. As Henry Stolt mentioned, I actually took it down, the submission for the Gurney outlet down to the MOECC on Wednesday afternoon. I was scheduled to meet with the regional director, but she got summoned to Toronto because they were in the middle of reorganization, and nobody seemed to know what was going on. So I don't know if that's going to work to our benefit or not going forward, because at the moment, a submission like this has to go into the regional office, looked at there, but it also has to go down to their approvals branch in Toronto, and it's a cumbersome process, to say the least. So I would call in, I'll see where things are at as soon as I can. And finally, we're continuing to meet with officials involved with the healthcare system, including the new supervisor and the interim CEO of the Brant Community Healthcare System, the board chair and the executive director of family health team, people from the LHIN, in an effort to get a report available for you to talk about what role, if any, the county should be playing in health hub discussions. And that's it.
Thank you, Paul. Any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can we have a motion to go in camera, please? Councillor Coleman, seconder. Councillor Simons, all in favor? Thank you. 2 minutes, please. Anyone wishing to stay can go into the front room here. There is a meeting room in there that you can wait in, and we'll call everyone back in when the in-camera is. CDC is back in session. What are we bringing up first? In the matter pertaining to the request on item 4E of the delegations by Mr. Henry Stolt, Councillor Coleman, you have a motion?
I'll put it on, I can't. Clerk has got it.
Madam Clerk?
So the resolution reads that the following resolution from the in-camera session as amended be approved. That staff be directed to continue working with the county solicitor on any outstanding matters that are within the county's control and bring forward any necessary reports or agreements that will provide for the registration of the plan of subdivision at the earliest possible time following the approval of the outlet by the Ministry of the Environment and Climate Change and finalization of cost sharing, and that this recommendation be reviewed at each cycle of the Corporate Development Committee.
Questions or concerns? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. That's it. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Coleman, Councillor Bowen, all in favor? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. The next meeting will be November 13th. Thank you very much.
Reminder, we have a council meeting.
Yes, we have a council meeting coming up